I'm Jeremiah Polachek, and I'm interested in how humans fit into an increasingly technological landscape, a place where our perception of the world is guided by algorithms and bots. In the 1992 film The Lawnmower Man, a simple man who mows lawns for a living is introduced to a virtual reality experience which exponentially increases his intellect. He goes on to have the first cybersex CG love scene and ultimately becomes so intelligent that he believes he is God. This intersection of the mind, body, and technology is one which pops up often in my work. The subjects of my paintings are defined by shifting and borderless edges that allude to the separation between the real and the imaginary. Primarily, I'm a painter, and my paintings are all about the relationship between humans and machines, consciousness and dreams. I work from my imagination where the handmade marks are most evident, and also utilize process-based approaches that seek to remove the hand from the work. Here you can see some of the different tools I use in creating my paintings. Some are absurd, like a bobble ball outfitted with brushes, or a modified turkey knife. These types of automatic paintings reference the Dadaist practice of automatic drawing. In addition to these machines, I also use a plotter outfitted with a paintbrush, which allows me to convert data into an XY axis, which is then painted onto a surface. For instance, in a recent painting, I used data taken from the so-called doomsday computer in the 1970s, which attempted to predict the end of the world. Spoiler alert, the computer said it was 2020. I used the plotter to create the initial images on the surface and approach the painting with an openness to form which allows it to metamorphose into being. In this work, I have used my own biometric facial fingerprint, which a computer uses to recognize me as a starting point. These points, and how computers are being trained to see, is actually quite similar to how we teach humans to create observational drawings and paintings. In addition to the series of heads that I've made, that now number more than 100, I'm also intrigued by abstract painting as a vehicle for investigation of what is called retooling. Retooling is simply how we must adapt or are altered by tools in order to generally become more useful and efficient. I would like to suggest that tools also make us who we are and form our perception of the world. In The Lawnmower Man, Job uses an old beat-up lawnmower as a tool for his livelihood, and one which performs a simple task. His life is then transformed by another tool, a virtual reality interface, which allows him to access uncharted areas of his mind. In my paintings, the body is something which is amorphous and organic. It's a primordial soup of potentiality waiting to be unleashed. There is little distinction between reality and imagination, and only the remnants of form are recognizable. In addition to painting, I've also experimented with video, sound, wearable webcams, and interactive, immersive installations. In this piece, I made a glove with a webcam attached to it, and the webcam was connected to a projector which would then project the image of me painting onto a painting while I was painting. In another interactive installation, I attached a webcam to a hat which a participant would wear. The participant was then given a brush that was hooked up to a contact mic, which produced sounds when the brush was touched to the canvas. The projection would project a large image of the participant's face onto the canvas, and they were encouraged to paint themselves and listen to the sounds which were produced. Over the summer, I worked on a short experimental documentary about the flatness of the North Dakota horizon. Pulling from Agnes Martin and abstraction, I took hundreds of videos of the horizon and then arranged them into simple strips of color and shape. I find the idea of the horizon quite intriguing since it serves as a border between earth and sky, and a horizon in art is also dependent upon a person looking at it. I started thinking about the history of the horizon in art and began searching for the first examples of it in painting and drawing. I asked online and someone said that it was probably Minoan, so I just believed them. The ocean, and its huge expanse of space, is actually quite similar in ways to the desert or the plains. These landscapes have helped me incorporate my own blobby figures into an environment which they can inhabit. My landscapes are surreal and dreamlike, and I see a lot of similarities to the early attempts at computer graphics and the types of landscapes we associate with surrealist painters. I like to look at these landscapes contrasted against medieval German spiritual paintings. In both instances, they are creating imaginary landscapes that are supposed to be transcendent. They never saw the lands where Christ was born, so they had to make them up. In my paintings, I try to situate my subjects in a similar type of environment, one which seems somewhat familiar, but also attempts to exist more in the realm of reverie rather than reality. The physicality of the body itself is quite important, and for this reason, I often look at anatomical drawings for reference material. These organic shapes are then contrasted against more mechanical marks that are consistent with what we associate with computer-generated imagery. In this portrait, the majority of the marks are not created by the hand itself, but rather a combination of machine-made marks using the bubble ball, the plotter, combs, and the turkey knife. This contrast of handmade marks versus machine-made marks underscores the tension which lies between the body and technology. When Job's transformation is complete, he transcends his flesh entirely and lives in cyberspace as a god of a new world of his own creation. My work examines humans in the latter stage of their current existence before AI becomes God and changes the perception of every person on the planet.